With its roots in the uprising of November 1830 and encouraged by events elsewhere in Europe, including the success of the Italian independence movement, and taking advantage of a Russia weakened by the Crimean War and the reforms introduced by Tsar Alexander II, the uprising of January 1863 was the longest lasting in post-partition Poland. Although it was ultimately unsuccessful and Russian reprisals were swift and ruthless, its engagement of all levels of society went on to have a decisive influence on the subsequent development of Polish society. This is the story of that uprising.
In one way or another, 200,000 people got involved
Yes.
in the rising, either fighting or getting into the national government or helping the uprising. I mean, women were very helpful. This is the case of Orzeszkowa, Eliza Orzeszkowa, one of the greatest writers of the positivist era, positivism in Poland. I mean, she would keep at home a wounded a fighter, and it wasn't alone. I mean, this case is not. It's not the only one that we can mention.
Of course, but I think if we look at some of the positives, I mean, the fact that this underground state, if we can call it that, had existed for the best part of 18 months is itself, I think, a tribute, and probably encouraged folk to see moving Poland forward. It didn't always have to be armed rebellion, but sort of organised work, organisational pulling together can probably also achieve something, probably laid good foundations. Would you say laid good foundations for the future?
Yes, because when the Poles had to build up another secret Polish state during the First World War, but more importantly during the Second World War, I mean, they had this, example, this tradition to bring back. So this is surely one of the positives of the whole thing. We said be rural organisations, urban organisations, banks, all sorts of the modern attributes of our modern society that the Poles had experience following as a result of the rebellion, and sort of was built into the national psyche, if I can use that word, to sort of how you can construct these underground, you can pull society together and actually achieve. And I also, I think very warmly about those demonstrations that took place in 1861-62. That's an example when you've got evidence, you've got sources that are undeniable, saying that noblemen walking hand by hand with bourgeois or students or even peasants. I mean, that was very nice, because I mean you don't see such. I mean, people generally think about history through pictures.
Yes,
I mean,
of course.
it's like when you talk about the Battle of Grunwald, you
have in your mind
the picture of Matejko.
Exactly.
And when you think about the Polish times, as it was called, in fact, just before the rising, you think about these, people from different strata of the society, walking one next to another. And this is very nice, because even if it's not that true, even if it's a bit exaggerated,
pumped up. I mean, it shows that there was a need for that. So that's why you've got postcards, photos, drawings of that type. So maybe for the first time in Polish history, you've got once again, I mean, and that would be, I think, a good conclusion to our discussion. You've got all the strata that would hate one another to death before.
But has sort of been pulled together by this rebellion.
National case.
And of course, the memory of which was very useful, the collective memory of which, and the traditions were very useful when it came, as you say, in 1918. And when Poland arose again and reappeared on the map of Europe, Pilsudski, you said, this child of the revolution in many ways, and sort of gave, and we've discussed it before in a similar way about the 3rd of May 1791 Constitution. People have this historical fact to grasp, and it comes in useful and time again. And even more recently, and I've met people who had been educated, for example, in the underground schools set up during the Nazi occupation of Warsaw in the Second World War, and more. And it
doesn't differ from university education. I mean, you are just astonished. My grandfather, he was I mean, received his higher education because I mean, he was. This is that generation.
Well, you probably, if you look at modern universities, they're probably a lot better. But I think a good point to end on is this idea that this pulling together, this bringing the nation together, this collective memory, this collective experience, this tradition, which then could be built on taking Poland into the future. Well, Dominic, thank you. That's been a fascinating discussion, yet again. Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure and honor.
Look forward to chatting to you again about some more exciting aspects of Polish history.
We should.
And thank you for joining us here on Poland Daily History. It's been great fun telling you about this exciting rebellion in 1863. Do join us again when we uncover some more exciting events in Polish history. Thank you.